Good day, my people. Welcome to today's topic, which is learning Python with data science. And today is day 6 of what learning Python with data science. So today's topic is a beautiful one, which is learning loops and functions together. I'm going to basically explain what is loops and function and how we implement loops and functions. So let's go down to the main video and get started. So stay tuned. So now we're here in the PC. So the next thing we're going to do, we have to rename it to day 6. You already know this particular aspect. So now let's go straight to the main thing, which is loops. Okay, so I'll come here and I'll say loops. I'm going to define what loops are in a straight definition. So a loop is a way to repeat a block of code multiple times, and we have two types of loops. The first one is the for loop and the second one is the while. The for loop will repeat a block of code for a specific number of times or over a collection. The while loop will repeat a code as long as the condition is true. So the first one will repeat a block of code. That means there must be a block of code already existing before it be able to repeat it. While the while loop will repeat a block of code if a particular condition is true. It's as simple as that. So we're going to basically see how we implement all these things and how we use the for loop and the while loop. But mind you, everything are all what loops. And what is loop? Loop is just the act of repeating things over and over and over again. So when you say you're in a loop, that means you keep on arriving to the same answer. Come here, we start with the what? The for loop. We say the for loop. So the for loop, underneath it, I'll start by giving it a for loop name. So let's say I have a variable which is name, and in this variable, let's say in the variable we have it as a Python. So I want something that will iterate through this Python for me. Do you understand? So I will come here and call the for. I'll say for I in name. For I in name. When I give this condition, what I'm basically telling Python is that I want you to go to this particular name and iterate through it. The first thing we're going to do is to call the for loop. The for loop is just the keyword for calling out your for loop. Whenever time you're assigning for loop, you have to use the for. Then the I is like the for loop name. I'm going to break it down right now. So let's say I have a spy now. My spy name is I, right? Then the for is just basically the command I'm giving to my spy. So I will say for I is a name. That I can be anything. It can be H, it can be any letter, it can be even a word. Do you understand? So for I in name, I'm telling my spy to go to this particular variable and iterate through them. Are you following? So that is what my I is basically going to do. So it's going to go in that particular place that it has name and iterate through them and give me the output. Okay, so let's see that. So for I in name, I'll come here, I'll say print I. Watch, when I say print I and I say print just the variable which is the name, like this, print just the variable, and I run it. You can see the difference between this particular one that we have here and this other one that all listed here is that this I is iterating through each of the characters. That means it's bringing out P, it's bringing out Y, it's bringing out T, like that. But whenever you say print name, it just brings out everything that is inside of that particular variable. So you can see how the for loop works. There must be a block of code that you want it to iterate through. So now what is just iterating through is through a variable, right? So now the next thing we're going to also iterate through is what? Collective items, things like list, right? So we're going to create a list and we're going to see how we're going to use the for loop to iterate through those lists or through that list. Okay, so we'll come here. So we'll say list iteration. So let's say we have a list that is fruits. Have all this list. We have coconut, banana, apple, and orange. So I want to iterate through all this particular thing. What am I going to do? Sometimes if you just want to do that, all you just have to do sometimes is just to bring it out, right? So this is what most times we do. We just call the fruit and we just bring it out for us. So run this now, it just brings out everything. So now let's say I want to iterate through this fruit now. All I just have to do is to come here and I'll say for, let's say hearts in, who has an idea? Fruits. Good. So for heart in fruit, I'll say print. Who can tell me what I'm going to print? Who can tell me what I'm going to print? Is what? Heart. So we'll say heart and run it. So you can see the difference between this first one is that coconut, banana, apple, orange, every other thing is printed out with the list. So this first one that we have here is for this particular heart. That is our for loop name. Then this other one is just printing out everything that we have there. So for loop manipulation, let's say name 2. Let's say we have this blue ghost like this. In blue ghost, we want you to iterate through it. So we'll say for I in name, right? For I in name. So now see, print what? I times 5. Can you see? Print I times 5. You can see what happened, right? You can see PP, YY, TT. It just brings out everything that we have there. Okay, but it's not bringing out this particular one, right? So there's an error here. The error is that we use name, and remember our name is this particular one that we have here. So the variable we give to this one is name 2. So we have to basically put 2 at the front here. And if you run it, you're going to see BBLL and so on. In what? In 5 places. Okay, so let's use the for loop with a conditional statement. So underneath here, the next thing I'm going to do now is to now create the variable. So we're going to have this variable known as what? Let's say Felix. So in Felix, we'll come down here and let's also have another variable that is going to take the user. So we'll say user, we'll say user input. So in the user input, we're going to have an input function that the user is going to enter. And in the input function, we're going to have something like this. What is the character? So the main thing of us doing this particular thing, the first thing we did was to create a variable which is name and stored what? A particular name which is Felix. Then we created another variable which is user input to get an input function from a user. So the user now is going to guess the characters that are inside of this Felix, which it cannot see. Are you following? So now we're now going to write a condition using the for loop that will detect and tell us if this particular user or if this particular character that the user have what guessed is found in the particular whole word that we have there. Okay, so that's what we're going to quickly do. So we'll come underneath this place, we'll say for I in, are you seeing? For I, so our for loop name is I in what? In name. In name. Okay, so we already have name, so let's quickly change this our variable to name 3. Remember, your variable must be unique. So for I in name 3, I'll come here and say if I is equals to user input is equals to user input. Can you see that? This is what I want you to do. You should print this particular message and say character found. Okay, so but what if is not found? We'll come outside here and I will say what else. Why am I adding this else outside of the for loop? Because when this else is inside of the for loop, that means it's going to still iterate through this else. So you have to be very, very careful whenever you're using this else. So this else must be outside of the for loop. Remember, anything that is beyond this column are what? Things that are indebted inside of that particular function. So for I in what? Name 3, every other thing that we have here is what? Is under this for loop. Are you following? So else is going to now be an option. The option means I am done, else do this particular thing at the end of the day. I've taught you guys conditional statement. If you've not watched the conditional statement, go watch my last video. Okay, so now this else, now I'm going to come here and say print character not found. Character not found, like this. So if we run this, you can see it asks the character. They say what is the character. So the user now can just guess, oh, Q. So it puts what? Q, and it clicks enter. You can see character not found because Q is not found inside of this particular word Felix, right? But let's put something that is inside of that word. So we have E, and you can see E says what? Character found, character not found. So there's a reason why this particular thing is giving us this issue, right? So pay attention. In this as I'm going to basically give a condition if I is equals to user input, and our I is also known as what? Name 3, which is this particular variable that holds this particular word. If you don't want it to iterate through the next line of code, you have to add this particular thing known as what? Break. So if this condition is met, it's going to break out of the loop. Instead, if not, it's going to what? Continue iterating, and that's why we have the character not found. So now I'm going to put F inside, capital F, and I click enter, you can see we have the character found. So you can see this condition is true because we use the for loop to iterate through this particular thing. So there's still many more that you can basically do with this for loop. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is the while loop and how the while loop works and how we basically use the while loop. So now I have this while loop stated here. We say I equals to 1. I'm going to use this I to do something. Remember the definition of a while loop. Your while loop will start its iteration when a condition is true. Please keep that in mind, right? But your for loop is different from your while loop. Your for loop, there must be a block of code that you want it to iterate through. But your while loop, a condition must be true before it to start iterating. Okay, so let's say we have I equals to 1. Now I will say y, right? So this while can go into an infinite loop. So always pay attention to that particular thing. If not, it will just continue iterating, it won't stop. So you have to be mindful of that particular one. So we say while I is less or equals to 5, what was going to happen? I want you to print I. So we're going to put I there now. Watch what happens when I run this. You can see everything is under what? An infinite loop. Trust me, if your system is not strong enough, your system is just going to cease. It's going to crash for a bit, right? So you have to be careful. So what I'm going to do here is where I'm going to teach you guys on how to interrupt your K9. So whenever you see your K9 right now is busy, you can see my K9 status is busy. All I just have to do is to come to this K9. When you click on the K9, to take a little bit, you can see my laptop is kind of lagging a little bit, so you have to be careful when you run this while loop. I'm just using my computer to show you. Okay, so I think I'll skip the video a little bit to save time. So after taking a while, please be careful. If not, it's going to give your laptop a little bit headache. So you have to be careful when you're using the while loop. But for me to avoid this infinite loop that is just happening here, all I just have to do is to come to this particular thing and say I plus equals to 1. Remember when I taught you guys assign operator? Remember when I said when you add this plus equals to 1, what this plus equals to 1 is going to be doing is going to be adding plus 1 to this particular one until this condition remains what? False. That's how it works, right? So you're going to add 1 to this one. It makes it 2, 3, 4, 5 till this particular thing is not equals to 5. If you run it, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and what? 5. You can see everything came out the way it's meant to be. If not, if I didn't add this particular iteration of plus 1, it's going to basically slow me down, right? But some of you, I know you've still not gotten the concept. Don't worry, Blue Ghost got you covered. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to basically show you another example on how we basically use this while loop. So I'm going to come here now. In this one, I'm going to copy everything here, right? So I paste it here. So if I paste it here, now let's increase this condition to 10, right? So we have enough space. And starting from 1, that means why I is this variable, is less or equals to 10. That means if this number is 10, that means this particular thing is triggered. So let's take this thing to 11. Now watch, if I run this condition, which is shift enter, you can see nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. None of my code ran. But now let's say this particular thing is in 2, or let's put it in 1. And I run this particular thing, you can see we have 1 to 10. What was it doing? This particular iteration that we have here will be adding it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till this condition is met. This condition is met. It's now going to what? Exit out of the loop. Are you following? So now watch what happens now. What I'm going to do. If I come here and I say I want to add plus 2, I want it to be adding plus 2 to this. So now if it adds this now, we should have 3. Then add another 2, we should have 5. Add another 2, like that. So if I come here and I run this, you can see we have 1, 3, 5, 7, and what? 9, because you added what? Plus 2 to this particular variable. It's as simple as that, right? That's how the while loop works and how it functions. There must be a condition. The condition must be true before it will be triggered. That's one thing you should keep in mind. If you're not seeing your code running, there must be a condition that must be met before it starts iterating. But for the for loop, it's just a block of code. It just runs for a block of code, and that is it. Let's see how we can use this while loop to create a multiplication table, a program multiplication table. That means in which the user can enter a particular digit and our computer, our program will be able to multiply to a certain amount for them. So let's quickly see that. So we're going to come here and we'll say smart sound. So in the multiplication table, I will come here and I will have something like this. So we have counter. So counter can be used for different things. You can use You can use it for a subheading programming thing, or you can also use it to set a condition as well. So I can say this counter should be 1. Then I'll have num. The num is going to be an input function. I'll put integer. Why? Because I want to convert this particular thing to an integer later on, because that is what is needed. So I come here, I add this tooth guy, and I'll ask what is the number. What is the number? So if I come here, I come underneath this guy. So after this now, what am I going to do now? I'm going to say y counter. I'm going to count the counter is not equals to 20. Can you see this? Is not equals to 20. I want you to print something like this for me. I want you to bring out these two guys, which is the num, and I want you to multiply it by the counter. So we add the assign operator, and this assign operator will now tell it to what? To multiply counter, or we can just say, let's add it the way we have it, num times counter, like this. But there's something we are missing, which is what? This format. So we have this format here, and we also have it at the end here as well. Okay, so you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do now, for this particular thing to keep iterating till this condition is met, what am I going to do? I'm going to come underneath this guy here, and I'll say counter plus equals to 1. That means keep adding 1 till it gets to 20. So let's see how this guy is going to run. So if I come here, run this, you can see ask for the user, it asks the user of the number it wanted to multiply. So let's say we have 2, we click enter. You can see 2 times 1, 2 times 2, like that. It keeps adding. It stopped at what? 19, because we said what? Y counter is not equals to what? 20. So we have to basically specify, we have to tell the computer what we want it to do, how we want it to what function. We have the 2 times 1, 2 times 2, like that. Why? Because of this function that we have here. And this plus equals to 1, we just keep adding it till it gets to this particular one. You can see it didn't get to 20. So let's say I remove this one now, I add 21. And let's say I come here and I run this and I put 5. You can see it calculates to what? To 20, and it gives everything the way it's meant to be. You can see how interesting it can be. You can see how we can basically use while loop to even create a multiplication table. We can basically do different things with Python, right? Like I told you, it's an interesting topic. It's just for you to understand the concept and how it's being used. If you're following along, you're loving this video so far, hit the like button and also subscribe. Do you understand? And also share to people, your friends that you know they don't understand all this concept. Do you understand? Some of them try learning it on their own. You can't learn things on your own. You have to basically need an helping hand to be where you are. So we are done with the while loop and the for loop. I hope you guys understand the concept and how it's been implemented. Let me give one more example. So we're going to say countdown. So in this countdown, we're going to have, let's say, counter. So in this counter, we have 10. So we'll say y counter is greater than 0. This is what I want you to do. I want you to print counter. So close this. Counter minus equals to 1. Then over here we say print subscribe. So let's see this. So we just created a countdown starting from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and 4. What's the thing? Let me explain it. The first thing I did was to create a variable that holds what? Counter of 10. That means where I want to start counting down from. So if I change this to 20, however I change this to 20 and I run this, you can see it starts from 20 here. But I don't want it to be too long, so I have to change it to what? Something short. So I say counter equals to 10, then I will say y counter is greater than 0. That means I'm giving a condition. That means the counter should be greater than 0. That is why you cannot see 0 at the end. So the counter should be what? Greater than 0. That means you can see our counter is starting from what? 10. That means it's greater than 0. Then I want you to print the counter. Then in this counter, I want you to have this counter minus 1. So minus 1, that means it's going to be minusing 1 from the main counter. Then when it gets to the finish line, and print subscribe for me. So that is why we have to subscribe. So please make sure you subscribe. So first of all, what is function? A function is like a little program that you use to perform specific action and is called by name. To use a function, you call it and pass in argument. So that is one definition. Now let me break it down to the simplest definition. So a function is a block of usable code that performs a specific task. You can define a function once and use it multiple times throughout your program. It can take inputs, which is called parameters, and return a result. So you can say the first definition I gave to you guys is the programmer's definition. You can define a function and use it multiple times. That's one beautiful thing about it, and that's what I told you is one of the particular thing you have to know as a Python programmer, as a data analyst, as also as a data scientist that you are in this field. Okay, so it's one particular part that is needed, right? So now let's see how we can implement all these things and how we can, use them in various aspects in our codes. Let's see the beautiful things that it can actually do for us. We're going to give it a markdown, and we'll call it function. So markdown. Okay, so right here we're now going to start by defining our function. In defining our function, we start with def. Def is a keyword for function, just like the way we have the for loop, we have the while loop as well, what are being used in the Python environment. So def, whenever you see def, know that is what? As a function. Do you understand? I'm about to define something. So now after the def, what's the next thing that I have? The next thing I have is the function name. The function name can be anything, basically, right? It can be anything. So I can give it let's say John, right? So I can say John, and it also has parentheses in front of it. The parameters are being passed inside of the parentheses. So now after this John, the next line I'm going to now write can be anything. It can now be my block of code. I can now continue writing code. The only beautiful thing about this function is that this function can be used for multiple things. It can be used multiple times. That is the beautiful thing about this function. So I'm done with my function, right? So my function, I just basically said like this video, right? So now, how can I now use this particular function? How do we even call it? How do we use it? I basically just have a print function. I don't want to over complicate things. What I'm going to do, I'm going to call the function name, which is what? John. I'm not just going to call John. If I call John, it's going to give me what? You can see what it's giving me, function main. That means telling me the name of this particular function. The parenthesis is meant to be there. So if I run it, you can see like this particular video. So even though I call this John, as far as I have John as a function, I can call it, you can see in the next cell like that, I can basically use that particular function name the way I want to use it. So this function is going to take a little bit time. So I want you to make sure that you pay attention to it, because this is one of the most important topic in this whole thing that we've been doing since, right? So I'll come here and I'll say def. In the def, I'll have vote, right? So vote is my function name. Then I want to pass in some parameters, and the parameters can either be my name, and let's say I want to pass in the user let's say age, and also let's say the user gender, right? So these are the parameters that I may need in my code. I want all this particular thing to be there, the name, age, gender. Then after that, I will come here and say print. In the print, I will use 3 quotation mark, right? Remember your 3 quotation mark, how will be used. So here I will say citizen, let's say it's a voting thing, we'll say citizen details. So in the citizen details, we also have an underscore like this. So underneath this one, I'll always add this thing so that I don't forget at the end. So we can just give space for the necessary thing. Remember, one thing our multi-line help us, it allows us to take things to the next line. So now I will have something like name. I'm going to put the name that I have inside of my parameters here, right? So the multi-line enables me to write things underneath the next line. If you've not heard about multi-line and how it's being used, go to my Learning Python with Data Science Day 1, right? I talked about it in escape characters. So make sure you go watch that video. So now I have the name, and in the name, I will save this particular username here. Then underneath this one, we have the age. And in the age, we'll also add this one, age. Then also this one we have gender, and in the gender we have the little gender we have. You can see I'm trying to match everything, all this particular thing, the way I have them. If age is greater or equals to 18, I want you to print this message: you are eligible to vote. Can you watch this? So if not else, I want you to print you are not eligible to vote. You can also add something like, try again next year. Right? So we have this like that. Okay, so after that, I can continuously writing other stuff using this function. Do you understand? I'm creating a program inside of a function. Do you understand? I can do a lot of things with this function, right? So, but let's stop here. Let's see how it's been implemented. So there's something I told you guys: whenever you want to call your function or whenever you want to use your function, I can run this without anything happening, right? You can see nothing is happening. Why? Because I've not called the function name. So I can even come to this next line and call the function name, which is vote. And now in this vote, I can call this vote just like this. If I run this, it's going to give me an error. It's going to tell me missing 3 required positional arguments, which is name, age, and what? Gender. That means I have to fill some certain things inside of this particular place. So I have to come in and let's say I will have to come in and give a name inside of this one. So I will say the name, let's say, is John Doe, then comma. The other one, let's say, is 19. And the last one, which is gender, we want it to be male. So if I run this, you can see what happened, right? You can see the citizen details is out. You can see we have the John Doe. You can see we have 19. You can see that we have male. And you can see it also tells the user that he's eligible to vote because the condition that was given is greater than what? 18. And the one that was given here is 19. That means the user is up to the age. The user is up to the age. Some people will ask, why can't I also use an input function instead of me using this? You can actually use this particular input function for this particular one. So that's going to be your exercise. Your exercise is that I want you to use an input function instead of you using this parameter. Instead, use an input function. We're still going to be doing a lot of things using functions, so you don't have to worry, you don't have to stress, and you don't have to basically stress yourself about how a function is being used and how we can also implement it, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you guys one more example for the road, right? So stay tuned. So I'm going to give you guys one more example. Let's say addition of 2 numbers or 2 things together using function, right? In the function we have sum and we have a and b. There are 2 ways we can basically add these 2 things. I can come here and say return a plus b, right? So I can basically say return a plus b. So if I come to this next line and I call sum, simple. If I say sum is my function name, and I say 10 and 10 and I run it, you can see it gives me 20, right? It's as simple as that. So this return, basically what you're saying is that return a plus b, the addition of what a. Just imagine you give me something and I want to return it back to you. That means sometimes you can give me 1,000 and I double it and give you 2,000. That's what basically that return is. You just basically give it a command that you want it to use this particular thing to do, and it returns it with the function that you give to it, right? So that is that about the function. So we're going to basically continue this function and see different things that we can do with it. I'm going to show you how we can use it to create modules, right? Remember I taught you guys about modules. If you've not watched modules, still go to my previous video and watch. Everything still starts with day 1. So if you've not started watching from day 1, go to day 1. Unless you already have a good understanding of what we're talking about, then fine, proceed and continue with the classes, right? So we're just going to use this function. We're still going to use this function to create a beautiful module, and you can see how we can create our own module using function, because functions, one thing is that functions are reusable. That means I can use them multiple times, right? Exactly. So that will be that for this particular video. So if you're not subscribed, if you're not liked, you can see everything that's going down here. Please hit the subscribe button and also hit the like button as well. So that will be all for this video. So stay safe and stay profitable.
Smart Sound.